what was really funny, at least now in hindsight, is that in that voice note, I told my future self, oh, okay, I'm expecting that, I'm gonna need to recover for a couple weeks or so from this burnout, and then I'll be good to go. Well, it's 20 weeks later, and I'm only just now feeling as though I have this rhythm. I am exploring what it means to be human, what it means to recover from burnout, which is how I felt, and how I can recalibrate this perception of myself. Hello, my name is Callum, also known as Wanderloots, and welcome to the second entry of my YouTube recalibrating experiment. I am learning how to present myself better on camera and how to better capture the value based on the knowledge and the experience that I've gathered throughout my life and bundle it in a way that I can share with you. Yesterday, I did my first video, and in that video, I talk about how I got burnt out from my job as a lawyer and a patent agent, how I quit my job to pursue a path of creation, a path of using my own knowledge and reframing the way that I think about value and how I can present this to other people. As part of yesterday's entry, I listened to a voice note that I had sent to myself from 20 weeks ago, the first day that I had quit my job, and how I was feeling after my first day of creation, my first day of freedom. And what I realized is that there's not just one side of myself. There's not just the lawyer me. There's not just the patent agent me. There's not just the engineer me. There's also the artist me, the philosopher, the reader, the writer, the friend, the family member, the partner. There's so many different elements of who I am, and it's just impossible to try and separate myself into little containers. At least I found it very difficult. I found that the more I tried to put myself into a box, the more I realized that the value that I had been trying to share was not in alignment with my job. The task that I was doing was forcing me to behave in too compact of a manner compared to who I feel I am. I think that especially in today's modern society, where we have all of these different aspects of generating value, trying to capture the essence of what that value is and putting it into a single job title just misses out on so much opportunity to tap into the individual creativity that we all have. So I decided to quit my job and begin what I'm calling the recalibrating experiment. I began by writing a newsletter. I am exploring what it means to be human, what it means to recover from burnout, which is how I felt, and how I can recalibrate this perception of myself and how I would like to have others perceive me. Throughout the newsletter, I have been exploring what it means to self-actualize, what it means to be the best version of myself. And as part of this, I realized that I needed to change. I needed to get out of the corporate box that I had put myself in over the last 10-ish years, and I needed to let myself think outside the box. I needed to allow my creativity to come into the various versions of myself so that I was better able to augment my performance, augment my happiness, and just generally improve the balance that I felt with my mind, my body, and my work, my generation of income, so that I can live the life that I want to. I love traveling, I love exploring. You can see there's a map there that has all the different places that I've traveled to. So there are a few countries that I still need to scratch off. I wanted to be able to restructure my life in a way that allowed me to continue this sense of exploration, that allowed me to pursue whatever passion I was interested in at the time without feeling like I needed to keep repeating the same type of value output that I had been experiencing at my job as a lawyer. While I understand the value of the corporate ecosystem and I understand the value of the knowledge economy, the internet has really changed everything about how we should be thinking about the transfer of value and the packaging of value. If we keep holding on to the past, we're going to just fall behind when it comes to the development of humanity as a species. Unfortunately, the way that we've developed has been treating humans like machines. We've been approaching it from a logic-based perspective instead of interweaving the creativity of what it means to be human in this modern world that has the connection of the internet. So today I listened to the voice note that I had left myself from, again, 20 weeks ago. This was the second day of my recalibrating experiment. And as part of this experiment, I've been leaving myself vibe checks, which are just voice notes to myself, trying to check in with where I'm at so that at some point in the future, now, I could be speaking to my future self, my today self, and I could give a bit more insight into the mental space that I was at the time and what I was hoping to accomplish as part of this experiment. So today I listened to that note, and it was really interesting to me because I was still very tired. I could tell that I was burnt out, but I had shifted some things around. I had been focusing on improving my physical health. I was doing yoga, I was doing mindfulness, I was journaling. I was doing things that I found hard to fit into my day while working a corporate job. And that was great. But what was really funny, at least now in hindsight, is that in that voice note, I told my future self, oh, okay, I'm expecting that, I'm gonna need to recover for a couple weeks or so from this burnout, and then I'll be good to go. I'll be good to start sharing the content, start this YouTube channel, start sharing the value that I had been envisioning for the past couple years as I prepared to quit my job. Well, it's 20 weeks later, and I'm only just now feeling as though I have this rhythm. I'm having this understanding of what it means to naturally self-express myself. Again, that's the point of this video series, is that I'm practicing learning how to speak to the camera, learning how to speak to you, my audience, my friends, my family, new people, and also to future me. And that future me aspect is actually a really interesting one to consider, because throughout our lives, we typically don't consider how our days and weeks and months and years actually form a version of ourselves. We as humans are the culmination of our experiences. That means I am unique because I have built up a certain amount of experience over the course of my life based on my circumstances, my traveling, my job, my friends, the passions that I pursue. All of these different elements of my experience fit together to form me, Callum. In this voice note to myself from 20 weeks ago, I mentioned that I had listened to a Waking Up series, which is the mindfulness app that I use. And there was a talk on procrastination and the concept of the continuity of self. And this idea of the continuity of self is that if you're able to bring forward yourself each day, you can build off of the days that came before, and you can be a little bit more aware of what it means to be me, myself. And what I told myself back in that voice note is that I felt as though the expectations of others at my corporate job were fracturing that sense of self. I didn't have continuity from myself because each time I felt like I was finally starting to get into the groove, I had to do something for someone else that I didn't quite resonate with, that felt maybe arbitrary, or I just personally didn't find value in. And that's not to say that other people didn't find value in it. It's just that I didn't. And trying to put myself into that box to meet the expectations of others, that's just really exhausting. That's what caused me to burn out, having a misalignment of my values with the value of the work that I was trying to do for my corporation. The point of this recalibrating experiment has been to have me research what it means to realign myself, what it means to self-actualize, to build on my past self, my past experiences, my past knowledge, and create a path of wisdom that leads me forward into the future so that I don't feel that fracturing of my continuity of self. And I personally have found mindfulness to be one of the best ways to help with this. Each morning I meditate and I journal afterwards. Sometimes the meditations are just me sitting there, contemplating life, allowing my emotions to pass through me. Sometimes they're listening to a series on the Waking Up app, a prompt of sorts where people discuss philosophy and happiness and what it means to be human and what it means to be a happy human and how we can all fit together to build a better world. If you want to learn more about self-actualization, that's the main topic that I've been discussing in my newsletter. And I've really broken it down level by level into what's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, human motivation, what it means to build off of the base level of our survival instincts and get to the level that we can fully reach our maximum potential. Interestingly, this Maslow's hierarchy, this hierarchy of needs, actually maps very closely to what's called the Burnout Recovery Pyramid. And the Burnout Recovery Pyramid is a way to gauge, depending on how burnt out you are, what level you need to start at in order to begin again, in order to begin the recovery of your burnout, in order to recalibrate your life and get yourself back on track so that you're not feeling this drain and this lack of energy and motivation and probably this feeling of apathy, not a lot of emotion, or this feeling of going in loops and not really being able to break out of the consistent cycles of your life that aren't leading towards this version, the best version of myself. By practicing mindfulness regularly, I'm able to have a clearer vision on what my actual goals are. I self-reflect, and this self-reflection, this practice of paying attention to myself and building this awareness of myself helps me identify the goals that I actually want to have in my life. And once I have those goals in my life outlined, this direction that I would like to head into, I can begin taking the steps to build towards those goals. And the point is not to hit the goal and then have it be the end. The goal is to build a habit system, a structure, a creative act of myself and how I engage with the world and how I generate value so I can make money to live and also improve the connections that I have with others. Over time, each of these experiments, each of these actions I'm taking as I restructure my habits allows me to recalibrate my sense of self. And one of the most important things I've realized is that there is no exact version of me. It's not just I am this or I am that, but each instant I'm a constant mixture of all of the different versions of myself. And the more I learn to pay attention to which version of me is coming out in this moment, which version of me is best able to respond to the current circumstances, the better and more able I will be able to respond to that situation without draining me, without causing me to burn out. As part of this journey, I started reading The Creative Act by Rick Rubin yesterday, which I talk about in the first video. And I also have begun taking video journals where I'm recording myself responding to me listening to the book, which you can find in a playlist in the description. And in one of the first chapters, Rick talks about tuning in to yourself, tuning into the world at large and what it means for you to connect with that world and express yourself in the world. So yesterday I was talking about how I went down to the water to watch the waves, and the waves would form and disappear. They would be created and they would be destroyed. And watching that pattern, it just provided me with a lot of insight on how my brain operates and how I can become very interested in a particular topic for a certain period of time, a wave, but I tend to lose that over time. And it feels almost as though I've missed out on capturing that experience and generating value that my future self will appreciate. I think it's really interesting that I mentioned in the first video that I was looking to tune into myself, and the second chapter of the book from Rick Rubin was tuning into yourself. So clearly there's some greater message that's happening here where people are beginning to understand what it means to connect a little bit more to the world around them instead of trying to just put themselves into an isolated box to pump out value as part of a corporate system, as part of a machine that's really outdated given the fact that we have the internet and we're able to connect with anyone, anywhere in the world and share our value to build a greater collective understanding of humanity. I think that especially in the age of artificial intelligence, as the technology accelerates more and more and more rapidly, which is going to keep happening, our ability to understand who we are as humans is going to become infinitely more important. I also think that the best way to figure out who each of us is individually is through understanding what it means to have intuition, to understand our own instincts, which are built off of the experiences of our past selves, projecting into the future so that we can gain the wisdom from our past selves and use it to guide the course of our future me. Hello. The problem, like I talked about earlier, is that people try to put themselves into a box and self-identify with only one specific aspect of themselves. However, there's a concept in psychology called Gestalt, and the Gestalt is kind of like synergy, where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And it can't be split into the individual pieces. There's just this overlapping, woven tapestry of the bigger picture of who an individual is. And when you try to fracture it, it's not great. You end up having a misalignment of value, which leads to burnout. You end up leading to imposter syndrome and anxiety and overthinking, which is something I struggle with, and just generally not really feeling comfortable with life. The way that I see it in a world that's about to be disrupted by artificial intelligence is that each of us is at a point where we can start to think, what is my value to myself and what is my value that I can share with the world? Getting into the monetization of it, the ability to generate income, that's a different issue. But I think it's important to consider that what we're effectively doing in the knowledge economy, which is most of the corporate world, is we are creating. We are creating something out of nothing, which is how Rick Rubin refers to a creator. And I think that's a really good way to look at it, because we so often want to separate the logic from the creativity and the knowledge from the creativity, from the arts, when there isn't really a separation. They're together, they're gestalt. There is a value of having both sides of your creative and your logic self and using that together to generate some new form of value packet, some form of intellectual property that you're able to share with someone else that they also perceive the value. This is in the corporate world done through emails and contracts and patents and other documents, right? You're taking something from your mind and you're creating something out of nothing. That is creation. It's just that we haven't really thought of creation in that way. But the more we begin to, the more we're going to start to see an overlap between the creator economy, the creative world, and the knowledge economy, the corporate world. The way that I see things going is that, like I mentioned in my video yesterday, we are trying to always shorten the time between coming up with an idea, having the epiphany, generating the value, and executing on that value, sharing it with others so that they can receive the value and perhaps have some type of financial exchange. Or, as is on YouTube, you create something, you share it with the world, and if the world values it, you begin getting ad revenue. There's so many different ways of monetizing, but most people just look at the internet and look at the content creator economy, and they're like, oh, that's too much work. I don't want to do that. I don't want to build an audience. I don't want to build a personal brand. But that's what most people are doing when they're working in their corporate jobs anyways. They're building a personal brand. They're generating intellectual property from their mind. They're creating it, and they're sharing that value with other people. And like I talked about yesterday, I think that artificial intelligence is going to vastly shorten the distance between the idea and the execution. It's going to reduce the effort from doing that. It's going to increase the quality, and it's going to remove a lot of the friction with publishing content in a way that typically causes people to overthink or feel like they're an imposter. I will explain a lot more of how specifically to use artificial intelligence to shorten that distance in time and effort and overthinking between the idea and the execution. I'll talk about that in some other videos. It's talked a little bit about in my newsletter, which I will link below. I think at this point, the average person, what most people should be thinking about is, in an artificially intelligent world, in a world that's shifting their definition of what it means to generate something of value, it's better to focus on the idea at this point. As a patent agent and intellectual property lawyer, my job was to assess the value of ideas. I wanted to take what these inventors were talking about and distill the idea down to the core essence, the point from which everything else expands from. The problem is that most people don't have practice doing this. They have gotten into their job, or they're just getting into their job, and they no longer are really at a phase where they're continuing to learn. They're just doing the same tasks over and over again. Yes, there's minor improvements, but there's not a big quantum jump. There's not a big leap in learning that typically happens after you get a couple years into your job. So you can start practicing this idea generation on the side. You can begin journaling. You can begin thinking of yourself, trying to build that continuity from day to day. Try to identify what you actually want in life, those goals, and then begin working towards them piece by piece, step by step, recalibrating along the way. As you do this, you'll begin to have a clearer idea on what the bigger picture is that you're trying to build towards, the self that you're growing into. And this practice is what's really going to help you hone in on those ideas, the things that you actually find valuable. And part of that is this process here, where I'm sharing information with you online, and I'm hoping for feedback. So if anything is valuable to you, please let me know. That means a lot, and it helps me recalibrate the message of this YouTube series so that I can continue generating more value for other people. As you build out these ideas, you're able to begin remembering what it is that you want. And as you remember this, you're able to build on that data, that information, and you'll start making connections over time. You'll begin linking your thinking, linking your ideas, linking your problems to your solutions, to new problems, to new solutions. And you'll build on that experience over time. You'll experience growth. So throughout this process, you'll start to realize what you really do value. And the ability that you have to express that value is going to become the most valuable thing you can do. It's really a question of identifying, how can I take this knowledge, this information, this this art, this experience that I have that I've been working on for years, and how can I express that in a way that other people value? How can I take what I deem as being original, perhaps generated through my consistent, intuitive, repetitive practices, where I'm identifying what makes me feel happy and excited and what I deem valuable, and you'll begin to discover what I call, and what many people have referred to as, your voice. And that's really what I've been focusing on for the last 4 months-ish, 20 weeks. I thought it was going to take me a few weeks to overcome burnout, but I realized that there was actually a lot more to the story than I thought. I needed to find not only what I wanted to say, that was the first part, but also how I wanted to say it. And that's a more difficult experience, and it's one that you really only learn by doing. And classic me, I would overthink, and I spent so much time building up what I wanted to say. I wasn't thinking as much about how I wanted to say it. I'm trying to develop my actual voice to tell my actual story. And not only that, but to read books like The Creative Act, or listen to podcasts, or read articles, newsletters, social media, and take in this information, digest it, process it, generate information that connects to information that forms knowledge, and then build on that knowledge over time to generate value to share with other people. And as I'm able to generate this continuity of self, I'm able to begin turning that knowledge into wisdom that is kind of like taking past me's advice and projecting it forward to future me to let me know, oh, this is something that worked before. Hey, maybe you should think about doing this, so that you don't have to overthink every step of the way. And if we think about the history of communication, we of course have voice as one of the primary means, but we also have art. And art is a really, really interesting form of communication because it's often nonverbal. There doesn't have to be a specific understanding of it. People are able to look at it and they're able to interpret what they wish out of it. And sometimes that's aligned with what the artist intended, and sometimes it's not. But the point is that anyone is able to look at it and extract value from the artist themselves. And they don't have to even understand the language. They're able to empathize with someone across the internet. That's a pretty valuable thing to be able to do. There's a reason that humans love stories, that we've been using story to convey information, potential value, and share it future into our society, into humanity. Back in the day, we would use story as a way to keep from dying, a survival instinct. You saw someone eat a berry and they died. So then you tell your friend, oh, by the way, don't eat that berry, you're going to die. That's valuable information that ensured the survival of our species. Then over time, as humanity evolved, we got to the stage where we were looking up at the stars, and we saw that there were consistent patterns in how the universe worked, how it rotated over the decades. And we developed calendars and ways to tell time, ways to structure the future so that we could be less afraid of it, so that we could ensure our survival moving forward. The prime fear that all humans face, the one fear to rule them all, is the fear of the unknown, of not knowing what comes next. And this is why a lot of people are experiencing anxiety with artificial intelligence, because it's going to change a lot of things. There's a lot of unknowns. However, the more that you become comfortable with change and become comfortable existing in the unknown, the easier it becomes to not get frightened by the future and instead to just go with the flow. Like the waves that I talked about in the last video. You're able to kind of just let life pass through you. And if you're able to go with the flow and trust yourself to have the confidence that you know that whatever comes next, you're going to be able to deal with it, that provides a lot of reassurance, and it removes a lot of the pressure and the stress and the anxiety of the future. In storytelling, there's a concept called the hero's journey, which is the monomyth. It was framed by Joseph Campbell, but it's an art of storytelling that has been passed on for many years, a structure of how we typically like to tell stories, a structure on how we like to project information and value and knowledge into the future, wisdom. And in the hero's journey, the hero goes from the known world, the ordinary world, and they get called to action. They get called to adventure, where they then go into the unknown and they pass some trials, they learn, they meet friends, they make enemies. They come to some inner conflict with themselves and how they understand themselves. And by going through this experience, they change, they grow. They have developed a different form of themselves that's continuous from their previous form. And they bring that knowledge as the changed, the person that understands the unknown, and they share that value with the rest of humanity back in the ordinary world. It's the classic way that we go forward and explore, generate value, and then convey that value to other people. I think a lot of people struggle to figure out how to frame the value that they are generating as they go into the unknown. And when you end up doing the same thing every day over and over again, you're never actually going into the unknown, you're just staying in the known. And if you're not going back and forth between the two, you're not generating really valuable experience that can be passed on to future you, to the rest of the world, to humanity as a whole, to perhaps an artificial intelligence personal assistant that's going to help augment and improve the quality of your storytelling, of your sharing of value. But if you start generating that continuity of self, if you start thinking about the future and how you can walk through it despite the unknown, you're able to begin seeing what your story is, what it means for you to be the hero of your own story. And if you consider yourself not a hero, if you don't think you are the hero of your own story, then my question is, who is? Who's the main character of your life if you're not? And a lot of people like to live like they're a non-player character. They like to live on autopilot, not really modifying their behavior. They just go through the same routines over and over again. And in that situation, you're not the hero, someone else is. So it depends if you want to run based on other people's expectations, if you want to continue down the path of life of doing things for other people that don't necessarily align with what you want to do. I know for myself, having been quite burnt out by doing this, it's been very helpful for me to take a step back and look at the bigger picture of my life and where I fit in it, and start to assess what my story is, figure out my voice, and then learn how to express it and share it with other people. In a way, story is kind of like a gift that we're giving to future us, to future me, to future generations of humanity. Especially with the internet, we have the ability to broadcast this story to every single person in the entire world, assuming they have access to internet. I believe almost everyone in the world knows what YouTube is. So I know that can be a little bit scary, but that's part of living in the unknown. That's part of what I'm trying to get better at here by talking to the camera and looking through my lens, the way that I perceive life, and then share my worldview with the rest of the world. I can't promise, but I hope that this sharing of value, what I perceive as valuable, is something that will impart wisdom on future generations, on people right now that are struggling with the same problems that I'm going through. Hopefully by me assessing these problems, I'm solving them in a way that will help you so that you can shorten that distance between the idea and the execution. Maybe you don't take 3 weeks to solve a particular problem because I've already solved it for you. And I'm learning how to find those problems that are the most valuable to help other people and share them in a way that's more effortless. The natural self-expression, natural storytelling. I think that it becomes easier to share your story with other people, at least I have found, if I think of it almost like a gift. You don't have to take it if you don't want to, but it is there. And if you find value, that's awesome, that's great. This is what's fueling the creator economy. This is what's fueling YouTube and social media and NFTs, which I'll talk about in another video. I think this is why we like books so much. We like looking to the wisdom of the people of the past. They've already gone through their hero's journey. They've gone through the unknown, and they've come back with information, with knowledge, with wisdom to propel into the future to help the people that come after them. They're walking their own path in life, and if they can bundle it in a way that future people find valuable, that's great, because that's really passing on knowledge between generations of people. And I think that we find voice very comfortable. We like listening to stories using voice because it's the original way that we heard stories. We like being able to hear the inflection and the passion and the excitement that people have, the ability to make us feel through words. I think personally, this is why I really like listening to audiobooks. It's one of my preferred forms of ingesting information, especially when the author themselves is the one that's narrating, because then you're not just listening to a book. You're being told a story by the person that experienced it. With YouTube, with the ability to share ourselves online, we can curate our experience in a way that we find valuable and project that value to people across the internet. The same as using books, but in a way bigger picture way. It's a way of connecting with anyone across the entire world. And that's a power that humans have only had for a relatively short period of time. The internet only really took off in the 90s, and look how far it's come in 30 years. And I think if that's any indication on how technology is progressing, just imagine how AI is going to change everything. It's already disrupting every single technology, every single corporation in the world. Everyone in the world now is starting to be concerned about artificial intelligence. So instead of just letting the fear stop you from looking into it and from researching it, start looking at it as an opportunity to change the way that we share value across the world, a way that we can change how we share story. We don't have to use as much effort before we're able to just take a video on our cell phone and perhaps run it through our AI personal assistant filter that turns it into our story format that we've practiced over time. And we're able to share our value faster than ever before. And of course, this comes with its own complications of information overload, of cognitive overload, of feeling overwhelmed with information. But on the flip side, we're probably going to have an AI personal assistant that we can treat as a filter to choose only to let through information that we have already curated ahead of time. So it's going to go both ways here. Over the past 20 weeks, I've been thinking about this a lot. What does it mean to be original? What does it mean to follow your intuition? And I've been tracking all of my thoughts in notes. I've been generating a system of organized notes to myself, to my future self from my past, to help me figure out where my value is. Part of the reason I've been doing this is because I think that this data set, this intellectual property that I'm generating, is going to become very, very useful for plugging into whatever personal AI assistant ends up winning the personal assistant race. There's going to be so many different ways that we're able to connect our existing knowledge into these artificially intelligent systems that are going to improve the quality of our output so that we can more effortlessly express our value with the people that come after us through our story styling. This is, again, a note to future me. I am extending what I view as a wisdom bridge into the future. I'm capturing how I feel right now and the understanding that I have on a lot of different topics, and I'm projecting this into the future where I can go back and review my past self, and I'm able to continue on from the point that I left off. Ernest Hemingway actually came up with a phrase for this. He called it a bridge, so it's become known as a Hemingway bridge. And what he would do is every day, as soon as he knew exactly where the story was going next, he stopped. And he left himself just a couple notes on where to continue that story in the future. And by doing that, he was able to reserve some energy for the rest of his day. He was able to then use that surplus of energy that he had to kickstart the process the next day and continue right from where he left off. And in a way, that's what I'm doing with these YouTube videos. That's what I've been doing with my daily journaling and my mindfulness routine that I've been taking notes on afterwards. I've been generating a series of wisdom bridges over time to keep linking myself together as I move into the future. I'm finding a way to generate my own continuity of self, something that I'm able to, no matter which self I'm feeling in the moment, I'm able to connect to it, and I'm able to bridge between those selves as I go through my life. And I personally think this is going to be one of the most valuable skills I ever learn. And I hope that I'm able to help you understand how to do this as well. If you're interested in learning more about all of these topics, I've discussed them over the last 20 weeks in my newsletter. So as Rick Rubin says, if everyone starts considering themselves as an artist, as a creator, who knows how much value we'll be able to generate, how much wisdom we'll be able to build off and share with the world in whatever way each person feels like. If we stop thinking in silos and containers and operating like machines, we'll maybe be able to develop an actual better system on how humanity can develop and thrive. I personally think that artificial intelligence is going to augment this, though of course there are ethical issues, there's biases, there's a lot of problems that we have to think about. But the more we think about these problems together, and the more we look at systems like this with hope on how we can make the world better, the more we'll be able to make that future true. I hope that you found this useful. I know that this has been a good experience for me. I feel as though I'm getting a little bit more comfortable talking to the camera, and I hope you feel that too. I'm excited to keep this going. I think in the future, I'm going to be talking about digital identity and what it means to put yourself out there online, and also looking back to what it means to generate myth and what it means to actually have story develop over time. If you found this content useful, I would love if you could please share this with a friend. I really am trying to grow my channel, and your support is what helps me grow. So consider subscribing, consider checking out my newsletter or my photography, and just let me know what you think. I would love to hear your thoughts on how I can help you. because the more I can help you, the more I can help future me, the more I can help everyone. And that's kind of the whole point.